From the beginning, TikTok has been one of the most controversial social media platforms in the world, and the book space, known as Book Talk on there, is no exception to that, with a lot of people thinking that Book Talk is just a place for pushing consumerism and anti-intellectual takes on books. There's some of that happening there for sure, but I think that the TikTok ban is going to be very bad for the book community as a whole, and I mean like really bad. So here are 4 reasons why I think that. The first reason is pretty obvious and straightforward. When we reduce the amount of places where people can engage with books, that's not great. And a lot of people might think that the type of books that they like, and serious books and good books, aren't discussed on TikTok, but that's just not true. I do think that right now, Instagram's literature community, for example, is definitely more robust and perhaps a little bit more serious than on TikTok, but there are a lot of great creators talking about literature on TikTok, and I've discovered quite a few books from there. Whenever you see these videos here on YouTube or other places about, is Book Talk killing the book industry, or is Book Talk bad for readers? The argument is always around the saturation on Book Talk of fast fiction, romantasy, this spicy kind of culture around books, and people that maybe don't read for more, I guess, serious reasons, for lack of a better phrase. And I don't want to comment on that at all. Whatever reason you decide to read, that's your personal business. I'm not making a judgment about that. But the reason why that argument doesn't hold up for me is because it's not like someone like me who reads literature predominantly from the 20th century, a lot of translated works, is now somehow going to be influenced into reading a ton of romantasy or books that were written purely for an economic standpoint or just to turn a profit. But I do think the reverse of that is true. And what I mean by that is there might be people who weren't reading and they got involved in the reading community through this kind of more pop culture book talk scene, and then through that experience ventured into classics or more serious works and really started to develop their taste as readers. I posted a video on TikTok a few weeks back asking what it was that got people to follow me and why they like my content. And quite a few people said, I really appreciate that you post about a variety of books and not just fantasy or romance. I'm predominantly a romance reader, but I do enjoy a classic here and there or some more serious literature, and I'm appreciative that you're here making content about that. So I do think that it's a two-way street in that sense. Now, I know some people might say that, okay, all that's fine, but this pop fiction space is crowding out the serious books and the good books. I, again, don't really know that that's true, and that's for 2 reasons. Number one, the internet is a huge place. These platforms have huge audiences, and there really is time and space for everyone, and it behooves all of these platforms to serve you the videos or the posts that most connect with you, because then you're going to stay on the app for longer and they can show you more ads, and that's their ultimate goal. But I also don't think it's true that 20, 30, 50, 75 years ago, these books that have stood the test of time were necessarily all that popular to begin with, perhaps more so than serious literature is taken today. And when you think about literacy in general, especially here in the United States, it's kind of this weird series of events where literacy rates were very low, and as they started to increase, there was this kind of golden age of writers being these rock stars, but it quickly went away as other forms of art started to crowd it out, with radio and television and cinema becoming more available to more people. And that weird cross-section of time between when a lot of people were able to read and there weren't other forms of other entertainment to distract people with, that was a pretty short-lived thing. The second reason why the TikTok ban is going to be very bad for readers is because the ability to monetize as a creator on TikTok is much easier than it is on other platforms like Instagram or even YouTube, in my opinion. And whether you think influencers and creators are valuable or not, they do play a role in helping authors promote their books, which encourages authors to write, and without writers writing, this whole thing falls apart. I personally don't want to live in a world where our books are written by computers. I just don't. I'm not interested in that. AI by default is inherently derivative. It cannot create something from scratch. It can only create based on its inputs, and its inputs are the work created by real human beings in the first place. So I'd rather keep the robots out of it and just keep reading from real people. In 2024, I made a video about Hard Rain Falling by Don Carpenter. That video did about 1.5 million views on Instagram and about 1.5 million views on TikTok. It sold out almost worldwide. I'm pretty sure Don Carpenter's family is still getting royalties for those works. It's published by NYRB, which is a small independent publisher which publishes great work, so it's hugely beneficial to them. Imagine if 1.5 million people didn't find out about that book because TikTok didn't exist. So having this space where people can use the platform as a tool to support the reading community, whether they're on the creative side, the publishing side, or the promotion side, is a really good thing. Now, the third reason why I think the TikTok ban is really bad for the book community is because TikTok is pretty much the only social media platform out there now that's not directly tied in some way to the United States government. And I think that that's a good thing, because if you think about it, we have X, which is run by Elon Musk, and he's Trump's right-hand man, or maybe Trump is his right-hand man, depending on who you ask. We have Meta, which is owned by Mark Zuckerberg, and they run Facebook and Instagram. Not only did Zuckerberg make an announcement this week, basically saying that Facebook and Instagram will become safe spaces for misinformation, but Meta also recently appointed Dana White, the president of the UFC, to their board of directors, and this matters a lot because Dana White and Donald Trump are longtime friends. Donald Trump attends many UFC events, and Dana White has spoken at many Trump rallies. They've been thick as thieves for a very long time. I think when you blur the lines between these platforms, which really affect public perception and the government itself, that's a problem. And TikTok has always been a place, in my experience, for a lot of diverse thought and opinions. And I think it's going to be particularly bad when companies like Meta or X don't have to worry about a competitor like TikTok. They can make the changes they want, and people will stay on their platform because right now they really don't have any other opportunities. If TikTok remains a viable option for American users, these other platforms have to toe the line a little bit more because they do risk losing market share. And if you're outside of the US, you should still be concerned about this because a lot of creators outside of the US have a predominantly American audience, which will go away if the app gets banned. And the fourth reason, well, this doesn't actually have to do with books, but in general, I just think this is a massive infringement on my rights as a free citizen in a free country, and I do see it as a suppression of freedom of speech and expression. And it's quite ironic and perhaps a bit hypocritical that we have all these people cheering these rollbacks in censorship on Meta's platforms at the same time saying that, well, we need to ban TikTok because it might be connected to the Chinese government, even though I haven't really seen any legitimate proof of that. Maybe it's out there. If you have some information, I don't know, please feel free to leave it below. I would love to take a look at it. But my opinion is, if you're worried about your personal information and data and your safety online, don't use the app. And for those of us who are comfortable with taking that risk, let us continue to use it. The US government is not supposed to be there to protect citizens from themselves, but to protect citizens' rights from being infringed by others. And I have engaged in a willful and consensual contract with TikTok by having an account and posting to it. If you don't want to use it, don't use it. But as an American citizen, it puts food on my table. And I know many business owners who also have successfully marketed their business on TikTok. And I'm really concerned for small businesses and readers all throughout the United States if the ban goes through. So what is the solution here? Well, I hate to be the type of person that just complains about something and doesn't give you a clear-cut, actionable step to fight back. But this is a little bit unprecedented, and I'm not exactly sure what to do, but here is an idea. I think more now than ever is a time to start connecting with like-minded people in spaces off of the traditional social media apps, because as we're seeing, these things can be taken away from us pretty much at any time. So that could mean joining an existing book club, starting your own, going to events where authors are speaking live, Be sure to support your favorite authors by buying their books, talking about them online, supporting indie publishers, your local bookstores, or you can join kind of alternative social media platforms like our community on Patreon. Yes, it is a paid community, but having that paywall, albeit a very small one, does put a slight barrier to entry in place to keep these spaces from being flooded by people that we don't want there. And what I mean by that is people who aren't really interested in being part of a community, but want a place to shout their ideas, to put others down, to attack those they deem as the enemy. I can't tell you how refreshing it's been to engage with the community that we've built on Patreon without all the extraneous noise and garbage that comes with regular social media. When I log into the Life on Books Patreon, it's just a bunch of people who love the same books that I love, talking about books and a whole bunch of other cool stuff, and it's people I'm getting to know and people who I really like and who are great upstanding people who just want to be part of an awesome community. So that's my one plug for our community. There is a link down below in the description, but other things you can do is reach out to your representatives, let them know how you feel, and of course vote with these intentions in mind when the midterms come up, and support your favorite creators any way that you can in the spaces you still have access to them.